Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Space News for Friday, September 7th. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Kyle Henry. Let's talk about what's going on in space.
I never want to hold again.
Falcon Heavy is in startup.
Go Atlas.
Go Centaur.
Status check.
Go Delta.
5, 4, 3.
Mission.
Our top story, the Hayabusa 2 spacecraft has determined its landing sites. The Hayabusa 2 is a Japanese probe that is studying asteroids and is currently at asteroid Ryugu and is scheduled to conduct its first series of landings in the coming month. Now, during these landings, it will deploy a rover and a lander, as well as retrieve samples. After collecting samples over the next year, it will be leaving the asteroid in December of 2019 and will be landing on Earth in December of 2020. And the exploration upper stage now has a debut date. It will debut on the Exploration Mission 3. That will be in around 2024, but this is SLS, so I'd say add another year or two at best. But during EM3, it will take 2 modules to the Gateway Station, as well as an Orion spacecraft. The first module is called Esprit, which is the European system providing refueling infrastructure and telecommunications. And the other module is a US utilization module with an external robotic arm likely based off of the Canada arm. And in other SLS news, the mobile launcher completed its stay at Launch Complex 39B this morning. It left the complex early this morning and will be arriving in the VAB at some point in the next day or so. Once there, it will be undergoing testing for the next year or so before finally they will begin stacking the first SLS on top of it for its first launch. And in other Launch Complex 39B news, the Omega A rocket has been given a quick update by Northrop Grumman. They announced that they've completed the first live motor and have filled it with propellant. Omega A is of course the new launch vehicle for Northrop Grumman. Originally it was being built by Orbital ATK, but they were then bought by Northrop Grumman, as we've said now a couple of times on this show. And they will likely be using Launch Complex 39B for launches on a repurposed mobile launcher. And its first launch is scheduled for around 2021. And in Decatur, Alabama, the first stage of the Atlas V booster that will carry CTS-100 on its orbital flight test, which is the uncrewed one, is nearing completion and should be shipped to the Cape really soon. And over the past couple of days, we've had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 sounding rocket launches. These launches have taken place in China and in the US, 2 for each. First up, on September 5th, a private Chinese company called Ispace conducted a launch with 3 CubeSats. Then today, another private Chinese company called OneSpace conducted a launch from China. This was their second flight. And in America, we've had 2 launches in the past couple of hours for sounding rockets. First, in Wallops Island, they conducted a launch that tests the Mars 2020 rover's parachutes. And in White Sands, New Mexico, they conducted a launch of the FOXY payload. FOXY stands for Focused Optical X-ray Solar Imager, and it was looking at the sun in multiple different X-ray formats. And that's it for sounding rockets, but there was one other launch that happened yesterday. Last night in China, the world's second most secretive space program, they conducted a launch of a Long March 2C. We first knew about this launch from warnings that were issued to pilots of the drop zones for the boosters, and they suggested it was a polar launch. And we actually now finally have launches that we can talk about because they're not being secretive. So we have 2 launches coming up between now and Tuesday's video. First up, Telstar 18V is now scheduled for Sunday night instead of Saturday night. This delay is so they could do some more ground checks on the booster and the launch pad and the payload. But that is scheduled for 11:28 Eastern Daylight Time, and the window runs until 3:28 Eastern Daylight Time. They conducted the static fire for that launch earlier this week on Wednesday. And our second launch is the HTV-7 aboard an H-2B rocket from Japan. The HTV-7 will be delivering supplies to the ISS and is currently scheduled for a launch at Monday at 6:32 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. But before we go, we want to issue a correction because remember, at the end of all of our episodes, we say we strive for 100% accuracy, and we misrepresented a story last episode. So that story that we misrepresented was the announcement of the United Arab Emirates' first 2 astronauts. We said that we didn't know when they would be launching or which astronauts would be flying when or what vehicle they were flying, and upon further review after our recording, we realized that we missed a lot of information, so we're going to correct it right now. So, only one of the astronauts will actually be flying next year, while the other acts as a backup. That launch is scheduled for April, and will be launching aboard the Soyuz MS-12 vehicle. But I'm Kyle Henry. Thank you so much for watching. We post newscasts like this every Tuesday and Friday. So if you enjoyed, hit the like and subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you can stay up to date on what's going on in space. Also, links to my social media are in the description down below. I post mainly about space travel and will occasionally update on what's going on in the show. If we're having delays or having any issues, they'll be there first, so go check that out. We also post links to all of the sources for today's stories in the description down below, so you can check our facts, and if something doesn't seem right, let us know. We strive for 100% accuracy in our coverage. Thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.